everyone, my name is Amber and welcome to the Dining in Cookbook Club, where we're going to go through an entire cookbook with all the recipes and try them out, rate them, and see what is worth your money. This month, maybe two, it's a big cookbook. Our first cookbook that we're going to be exploring is our Genius Recipes from Food52. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Actually, let's take a step back just a little bit and talk about the book. This has over 100 recipes, and so we're going to be going through most of them. There are some alcoholic beverages that I'm going to skip over, but I'm really excited because these are a combination of authors and writers and bloggers from all over the place into one book. And you can purchase this at Amazon for currently $25. So let's go ahead and get cooking and see what's on the menu for this week. Now that you know a little bit more about the book, I feel like we can resume and move on. Let's go ahead and get started. For our main dish, it is our sticky balsamic ribs, and this is on page 119 if you want to cook at home along with me. It has a lovely sticky balsamic sauce that you drizzle on it. Oh my gosh, guys, it's so good. I know, sorry, spoiler alert. But let's go ahead and I'll show you how to make these ribs. All right, here are the ingredients, and as you can see, they're pretty pantry standard items, and really the only two ingredients that you'll really need is the ribs, of course, and some fresh rosemary. First thing we need to do is make the marinade. Let's do this. I took my minced and smashed garlic and put it in a mortar and pestle, and then I added half a teaspoon of salt and mashing it until it is smooth and paste-like. And then I'm going to transfer it into a bowl so that I can mix the other ingredients to it. And then add 1 tablespoon of rosemary, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, and 1 tablespoon of our balsamic vinegar. And we're gonna go ahead and mix that together. Oh, just kidding. We're gonna add some cayenne pepper and then our pepper. And then also add your salt. As you can see here, my salt is on the right side corner and I forgot to add it, but I added it later on, so it's totally fine. But just remember, please add your salt to the marinade mixture. Okay, now that everything's in the mixture, we're gonna go ahead and mix it all up till it's all combined. And then we are going to slather that baby all over the ribs and rub it in. Give it a nice good rub-a-dub-dub. Ain't she a beauty? Now I'm just going to cover it nice and tight with saran wrap and then refrigerate it in the refrigerator for 8 to 24 hours. Good morning, guys. It's the next morning. So let's get cooking these ribs. So the directions said to use a roasting pan. However, I do not have a roasting pan. I have a cooling rack and I used that and it was totally fine, or in the most part. But go ahead and add a half a cup of water to the bottom of your roasting pan. Now I just wanted to let you know this is not enough water and I ran into issues because of it, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And then you're going to seal that up with some aluminum foil. You want it to be really, really tight. I should have doubled or tripled the levels of aluminum foil on here. Then stick it in the oven and bake that for about 1 hour and 45 minutes at 425 degrees until it's very tender. And then pull that sucker out and voila, you have a burnt bottom like me. Okay, all kidding aside, it could have been my fault with not putting the aluminum foil on enough or whatever. But if you had your other cup of water and yours turned out fine, this is where you would add your cup of water to scrape up the bits and pieces from the bottom so that you can add it to a saucepan to make your balsamic syrup sauce that goes over it. So unfortunately, obviously, I did not use the drippings from the bottom of the pan because they were burnt, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to make the balsamic syrup sauce. The directions suggest using a 10-inch skillet to add your remaining 1/4 cup of brown sugar and half a cup of balsamic vinegar, and then go ahead and add your 1 cup of water or the water mixture mixed in with the brown bits. And go ahead and combine all the ingredients until they're well incorporated, and then stick it on the stove top and bring to a boil, stirring occasionally until it becomes a syrup-like consistency, and you have about 1/2 cup of syrup. This will take about 15 minutes. Don't you love how you can't see the consistency? I'm sorry about the lighting, guys. And then go ahead and set that aside, and you're going to go ahead and place them on a baking dish or a pan that can go into the oven for this last part. And you're going to go ahead and stick those onto the pan and then drizzle that balsamic sticky sauce all over the tops of them and put them in the oven on broil for 8 minutes and making sure that it's about 3 to 4 inches away from the broiler. They're done. Look how freaking good these are. You guys excited? Now, it's time to make some sides to go along with our sticky balsamic ribs. The first side we're going to be doing is our gratin of zucchini with rice, onions, and cheese. And I botched that, but it has all the ingredients, so I say let's get cooking. Here's what you need for the recipe. If you want to cook along with me, it's on page 193. The recipe suggests to have 2 to 2.5 pounds of zucchini or other summer squash. For me, that was about 3 zucchinis, and I'm just going to slice these up into quarters to make it easier to put into my salad shooter to grate them into this bowl. Now, if you don't have a salad shooter, you can definitely use a cheese grater. It just may take longer to grate all of it. If you're interested in the salad shooter, it's linked down below for you to check out. Now that I have grated all my zucchini, I'm going to transfer half of it to this colander, and then the recipe suggests to add 1 teaspoon of salt to each pound of zucchini. So I have 2 pounds of zucchini here, so I'm adding 2 teaspoons, but I'm doing this a little bit differently. I added 1 teaspoon to the colander and then 1 teaspoon to the zucchini that's already in the bowl. And what I'm doing is just making sure that the salt is evenly distributed between all of the zucchini. And then once I mix them, I'm going to combine the two and then transfer the colander over the bowl and start squeezing the zucchini to extract those juices. I'm just going to let it sit and drain while I move on to the next steps until I need it. And then during this time, I'm going to start on the rice portion. In a pot, you're going to bring water and salt to a rapid boil, then add 1/2 cup of rice to the mixture and then put it back on the stove top. And then you boil that exactly for 5 minutes. Now this almost burned my rice, so just be really careful. Now the directions did not specify how much water or salt to add to this, so I just used the rice ratio of 2 to 1, and so for that it'll be 1/2 cup of rice to 1 cup of water, and then I just did a big dash of salt into the pot as well. In a large skillet, you're going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil along with those onions, put that back on the stovetop, and cook for 8 to 10 minutes until they become translucent and golden brown. While the onions finish cooking, I'm going back to my zucchini to squeeze out any excess liquids from them. And then I'm transferring them to a bowl that's lined with paper towels so that I can just dry them off a little bit more. This just allows for any excess liquids to be absorbed through that paper towel so that the zucchini is as dry as can be before going into the onion mixture. So I'm adding the dried zucchini along with 2 cloves of minced garlic, and I'm cooking that for 5 to 6 minutes until the zucchini is nice and tender, and then I'm adding 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour to the mixture as well. And then after I incorporate the flour into it, I'm going to go ahead and turn up the heat to moderate, and I'm going to cook that for 2 minutes. Then after the 2 minutes, I'm going to remove all of it from the heat. Now I'm just measuring out how much liquid I was able to extract from the zucchinis. And then to complete this measurement, I'm going to add enough milk so that it's about 2.5 cups of milk and zucchini combined liquids. And then you're going to take that liquid and you're going to put it in the microwave for 15 seconds, or you can even use a pan to warm it up, just making sure not to curdle the milk. And then you're going to gradually incorporate that into that cooked zucchini that we took off the stovetop. Then you're going to make sure that the flour is nicely blended into the zucchini, and then you're going to put it back on the stovetop. And you're going to cook this at a moderately high heat until it reaches a simmer. Remove that from the heat once again and add that blanched rice and all but 2 tablespoons of the cheese to the zucchini mixture. Stir that until it's combined and grab a heavily buttered 6 to 8 cup flame-proof baking dish. I went ahead and used a 9x13 and it worked totally fine. Even though it wasn't flame-proof, they have an option in the cookbook that you can just stick it in the oven instead of putting it on the stovetop. Once you poured your mixture into your baking pan, then taste it and make sure the seasoning is on point. And using the remaining amount of cheese, sprinkle that on top of the zucchini mixture and then drizzle the remaining 2 tablespoons of olive oil over the cheese. And if you have a flame-proof baking dish, this is where you would stick it on the stovetop and bring it to a simmer, and then transfer it to a preheated oven at 425 degrees and bake it additionally until the cheese is bubbly and has browned on top. Now, the stovetop is completely optional, and if you don't have a flame-proof baking dish, then go ahead and just stick it into the oven until your cheese has browned. Ooh, And look at that. Our first side is done, so let's go ahead and move on to our second side. It is called Use a Spoon Chop Salad. Let's get chopping. No? Oh, okay. I'll get chopping. There's some mise en place that needs to take place to make sure that this recipe goes super smooth for you. So let's get started. So go ahead and cut up your carrots, celery, bell pepper, apple, cucumber, your radicchio, and have your arugula ready, and then thinly slice your cabbage, which they recommend doing a Napa or Savoy. Once you have all your vegetables and fruits diced up and ready to go, then the only thing that's really different about this salad versus just throwing everything together and calling it a day, you're actually going to be pickling your carrots, celery, and bell peppers together in a vinegar. And how we're going to do this is the recipe says to bring the vinegar to a simmer in a saucepan over medium heat. Then we're going to add the celery and the carrots to it and then remove the pan from the heat. And once the pan has completely cooled down, add the bell peppers to the mixture. Transfer the mixture to a bowl and cover and refrigerate until cold. Meanwhile, mix the apple, cucumber, radicchio, arugula, and cabbage to a large bowl. Once the vegetables in the refrigerator are cold enough, then separate those from the vinegar by using a sieve and add them to the salad mixture. Use 1/4 cup of the vinegar that you just separated from the vegetables and add that along with the 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Then toss that salad well. Season to taste with salt and pepper. Then add the goat cheese and almonds to the bowl and toss again. Divide them on your plates and enjoy. Voila! It's done. So we're going to go ahead and get into tasting it and rating it. And I'm going to do 2 different kinds of ratings. I'm going to do 1 for how it tastes in general, and then 2, it's going to be a separate rating for how I actually rate the recipe and the explanation of the recipe. So I am going to rate these 5 dishes out of 5 stars, and I will rate the recipe cookbook by 3 stars. And I know that everyone's taste buds are a little bit different, so if one sounds good to you and I say ugh, then go ahead and try it anyways because you might enjoy it. Let's dig in. This is good. The ribs have surprised me. I thought I was not going to like them at all. Wow, these are way better than I thought. Who knew? They knew. Okay. I had the balsamic with the rosemary. It's just going to be too much. But the brown sugar and the cayenne that's in it really just help blend those flavors together. It is so good, guys. Oh my gosh. They are fantastic. Now, they're not your normal backyard barbecue that you would have like corn on the cob with. It's more of a romantic dinner, I would say. Highly recommend making this for a romantic night in, but they're just really good. For the sticky balsamic ribs, I would recommend them actually 4.5 out of 5. Pretty dang high. For the recipe, I would give it a 2.5. It did a pretty good job, but it gets half of a star removed because that in the section where I burnt the sauce bits and pieces, I couldn't use it because they didn't give enough water. I was walking around my house and was like, what is that weird smell? Something burning? And I'm like, oh my gosh, the ribs. And the water just had evaporated, and so what was left was the sticky balsamic and the sugar that just like first caramelized and then just went, you know? It should have been like half of a cup every half an hour. Like you check on it and make sure that you have enough moisture going on in the bottom of your pan. So for that, I couldn't get the fullness of the ribs if it had change of the bits and pieces. But for the portion of the balsamic sauce that I was able to make, that sticky syrupy sauce, it was phenomenal. It was so good. So I highly recommend that, again, for a night in with your loved one. For the salad, I'm giving that a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really like the freshness of it. It's a really good salad. Like, it didn't like, wow, this is amazing. Woo! It was just like, I'm healthy. Yes. And I'm not a big fan of the vinegar side, a lot of it. The vinegar really punches you. I am more of a creamy dressing, and I know people are gonna be like, yeah, Amber, don't hold that against it. But I do really like the freshness of it and how it has a lot of fruits and vegetables in it. Really appreciated that. But too acidic, the vinegars didn't balance out. Something was missing. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5. It's still a decent score. Let's move on. And then for the recipe portion of the salad, I give it a solid 3. Great instructions: chop, 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 mix, 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 put things together. You're good to go. Moving on to our gratin of zucchini. Blah, blah, blah. The gratin really, it kind of reminds you of like cheesy potatoes, because it has like the crusted cheese on top, and it's really nice, and the cheesiness inside of it. The healthy version of cheesy potatoes. It's very good. It doesn't upset anything in my palate. Glad that I tried it. It was good, but I would give this a solid 3 out of 5. Doesn't upset anything, not super wow, but my taste buds are happy. So 3 it is. For the recipe ratings of the gratin of zucchini, I'm going to give those a 2.5 out of 3. I'm taking a half of a star off of it because, well, frankly, in the rice portion, when you're cooking it, it didn't tell you how much water to add to it. So I just did like the golden rule of like the ratio that you would normally do with rice, and it worked out, but I almost burnt the rice. So because it doesn't say how much water that you're supposed to put in it, you get docked a star. Overall, very happy with these dishes. I'm really excited for how the desserts are going to be. That concludes our rating and our first episode. Yay! Well, part 1. If you want to watch part 2, go ahead and click below or find it somewhere. I don't know where it's floating, but make sure you find part 2 to watch how the desserts turn out for this. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to comment below to let me know what cookbook you would like to see next, or what recipes you're looking forward to seeing. Thanks again, and see you next time. Stay safe, and excuse me when I finish these ribs. Bye! You guys, does anyone else wear these? Or is it just me? Anyways, you gotta protect your eyes.